How do you feel your film has an impact or contribution to the underground element of hip-hop culture and graffiti particularly?
Well, again, I'm an outsider to that culture, and authenticity was our most important element. It was like our goal, our signpost, it was like our North Star was authenticity, because the moment you lose that, you end up with a movie that's like, tagged, featuring, and it's like, that's not the direction we wanted to go with the film. So, I mean, at some level, our film was not a documentary, I feel. I mean, this again is an outsider. But we had an obligation to do our best to represent that and to give it voice in a medium that traditionally it doesn't have. And so, suppose at some level, I consider this, even though it's not quality of life is not a documentary, it's a social document. And so at some level, I think we've contributed to the documentation of, and certainly a slice of time in San Francisco's graffiti history. It's not like the 80s, it's not right now, it's like this little slice in the late 90s, early 2000s or so, or 2000s or whatever, noughties or whatever you want to call them, that's where our film represents.
Yeah, I would agree with Brant that I feel like we captured a slice of life in a very specific time period, and there are scenes, the party scene, where you look around that room and those are the people in the culture, and those are our friends, and at the end of the day, I don't even care really like how the culture at large perceives us or what we contributed. And I don't mean to sound crass, but I made this movie for myself and I made it for friends and Brian's friends and that kind of the circle of people who were involved in making this movie, and they all were touched by it and they felt like we represented. And we went all over the world with this film. Our premiere was in Berlin at the Berlin Film Festival. And we had writers from Berlin telling us, you told my story, that's my life, and that was touching to me. And so throughout all the challenges and downfalls and being authentic, like Brant said, to the culture and representing a specific place and time was very rewarding.
How about you, Nick?
I feel like Piece by Piece is very authentic because it was kind of like extension of my own life. I was doing graffiti at that time, and I was not a filmmaker. I did not live in LA. I didn't understand Hollywood. I didn't even think I was going to sell this film. I thought I would just make it. My motivation was basically to preserve these photos and these stories, and I didn't really understand how DVD sales worked or how agents worked and all that stuff. So I was just making the film for myself and my friends, and then I didn't realize that actually other people would enjoy it and could be educated through it. So I think it holds a certain honesty and a certain sort of a homemade kind of collective quality to it. I was born and raised in San Diego, and then I moved to San Francisco in '99, and I was involved with hip-hop culture, and I started doing graffiti. And when I first got up here, I started painting on the walls and sort of going out and stuff, and I was like blown away by what I was seeing, because the type of graffiti was not on the same level in San Diego as it was in San Francisco. Like, you used to see, if you guys saw the first film, Piece by Piece, like, that stuff was really on street level. Like, you saw that just walking down the street or on the rooftops, and I just couldn't believe that this was actually happening. So I started to take photographs of all this stuff and sort of building up this this document. I didn't really know what to do with it. And then I started to, through my own graffiti, meet other writers that would tell me about all these crazy stories and all these historical references to the way this style has developed over the years. And so I was in college at the time, and I decided to kind of sit down with everybody and take their stories in. And I felt like it was kind of a movement that wasn't being documented and it wasn't being respected or understood by the outsiders. So I wanted to kind of capture it and deliver it to people.
My question to you is, from script to editing, two things. What was the funnest part and what was the most challenging part?
Q&As are clearly the funnest part.
I doubt it.
And the beautiful, intelligent people that come to stay for them are meeting you.
Thank you.
It's what really is special.
What a producer.
And the most challenging part, I suppose it was probably, to be blunt, raising the money. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. There's just no infrastructure out there to support little films like this. We had to create our own oxygen. And I mean, you hear a lot about people, oh, you're doing it, it's going to happen. It is a pain in the ass, I can assure you. And it's a pain in the ass to try to raise money from people and tell them, we'll be trying to really there's a good chance we'll probably be able to pay it back, even though there's not really any chance at all.
You know, I was a first-time filmmaker. I'd made some shorts and student films on my own, kind of DIY film school that I put myself through a community TV station. I had this vision. I knew what I could do. I knew what we were capable of. I knew what the story's capable of. I knew there was an audience. But being a first-time filmmaker, basically, it's very difficult to convince people to trust you. Just, you know, give me your money, give me your resources, and let us get out there. So the fundraising was very challenging and difficult, and that led to ripple effects of having producers that had day jobs, and me not having a job at the time. And so the financial aspect was very difficult, but that also led to the authenticity of the film, and being a gritty subcultural film. I think it actually contributed to the look of the film and the feel of it. So the best part really was like how I like to work, and I think Brent as well, is collaboratively, and having a small, tight crew of really great people. And the stuff that we came up with on set by just empowering everybody who was involved. And like you said, graffiti's a very democratic medium, and we approached it that way too, that no ideas were bad ideas, and we heard people out, and just getting out there and shooting stuff without having constraints.
I guess for me, it was just the access, because mine was a documentary, and although I was a writer, when I first started making the film, people didn't trust me. People thought I was a cop and whatever. It was difficult, but many years after filming and creating archives and networking with people, finally led me down the right path to spend time with all these people and kind of like help tell their stories. So editing it and putting it together was not nearly as hard as just like having people trust me, and that was tough.
I'm developing a feature that I want to shoot here as well, and Brant and I are both really invested in nurturing the San Francisco narrative filmmaking. And it's a comedy. Actually, I've gone in a different direction, something less dark, about a bike messenger who sells his wife breast milk.
I've read the script. It's pretty good.
It's great.
I read about that.
How about you, Nick? What's next for you?
My next project is I'm developing a narrative script about immigrants in Japan and the challenges they face in trying to assimilate in a culture where they can never be accepted.
Statements. It is foolish to paint on property that isn't yours and film yourself doing it.
Note to self.
And second part of the answer is that the rooftop was permission. I could give you a list of pieces that were permission.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're on private property and you get permission, and believe it or not, a lot of those were.
See, now you said too much.
How about you, Nick? In your movie, did you have moments
Yeah,
rushing?
I don't think any of the stuff that I filmed was legal in any way, shape, or form.
Do not incriminate
Yeah.
yourself.
My camera that I was shooting with at night was about this big, and so I was literally in a hoodie on the street with crackheads and random fools just trying to blend in and capture what I could, climbing on rooftops and getting into trouble, and I've had to run from the cops, hide under cars, stuff like that. But that
we had the cops roll up on us a couple times, and they were like, "Are you guys crazy? It's 2 a.m. and you're on Mission Street. Are you guys okay?" I mean, we rarely got asked.
Yeah, well, you gotta go through it to get the images you need to get. When I was filming it, I was also doing graffiti, which is really probably the worst thing I could do. So as I got into the editing phase, I totally I just stopped doing graffiti, and I just was doing the editing. But there's different points where lawyers have contacted me asking for evidence, and so I made it like a swear to everyone that I worked with that I would never turn over anything. And I was lucky because while I was putting the film together, there was a Vandal Squad unit in San Francisco that was tracking writers and gathering intel. But yeah, basically, I dodged that bullet somehow. I even tried to interview the Vandal Squad, and I tried to send another person in to get that interview, and if they had any type of intellect at all, they could have just tracked me down and got my footage, but they didn't. So, well, that's the reality.
There's been footage from documentary filmmakers that's been seized. I mean, this is a real deal. This is not just paranoia.
Graph TV.
Yeah, GTV for sure.
Rated his whole shit.
But SF doesn't. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, we actually, one of the actors in our film, the guy who played the stick-up kid, Dave Lieberman, with tats on his neck. He had conflicts with Curtis in the film, and he was facing 18 months in state prison. Not county jail, not a rehab, prison, state prison for graph. So,
Yeah, I mean, the standard offense, or what they charge you with when you get caught is a felony vandalism, and then they can charge you with felony trespassing and felony conspiracy. So if you go out and do a piece on a wall, you can be facing 3 felonies. And unless you know the system and you can afford a decent lawyer, you're up against some serious stuff. And that's like on a first-time offense. Yeah. So San Francisco definitely does not, encourage graffiti in any way. And the one thing that I'm really bummed out about is that there's no legal walls in San Francisco for these artists to go paint. And at least in LA, where I live now, we have Venice Beach, which is a series of small walls where you can go and show your ID and you can paint. But in San Francisco, there's nothing. So, if you're a kid that wants to do graph, you have no choice but to do it legally.
Brant Smith, the producer of Quality of Life.
Ben Morgan. Whoa. I'm the writer-director of Quality of Life.
Nick Hill, the director of Piece by Piece.